Trump boasts of an act of kindness, claiming the Navy has wiped cartel boats from the Caribbean. 4 killed in the October 3rd strike, labelled narco-terrorists. Maduro condemns US actions as imperial aggression. Lavrov offers Russia's full support to Venezuela. Hegseth says every authorization is in place. Tensions escalate as Washington expands its military presence off Venezuelan waters. US President Donald Trump announced that American forces had struck another vessel suspected of smuggling illegal drugs off the coast of Venezuela. Speaking before thousands of sailors at Naval Station Norfolk in Virginia during the Navy's 250th anniversary ceremony, Trump praised the operation, saying the Navy had helped, in his words, blow cartel terrorists out of the water.
In recent weeks, the Navy has supported our mission to blow the cartel terrorists the hell out of the water. You see that? And you know, there are no boats in the water anymore. You can't find any. We're having a hard time finding them. But you know, it's a pretty tough thing we've been doing, but you have to think of it this way. Every one of those boats is responsible for the death of 25,000 American people and the destruction of families. So when you think of it that way, what we're doing is actually an act of kindness. But we did another one last night. Now we just can't find any. You know, it's the old story. We're so good at it that there are no boats. In fact, even fishing boats, nobody wants to go into the water anymore. Sorry to tell you that. Well, they're not coming in by sea anymore, so now we'll have to start looking about the land because they'll be forced to go by land. And let me tell you right now, that's not going to work out well for them either.
Trump made the comment next to the Harry S. Truman aircraft carrier. However, it was not immediately clear if he was referencing a strike announced on October 3rd by Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth. The United Nations has condemned the operations as extrajudicial killings, urging Washington to respect international law. Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro denounced what he called US imperial aggression, accusing Washington of using military force as a pretext for regime change and resource extraction. Speaking at an international conference in Caracas, he declared,
"We will never be a backyard, a colony, or slaves of any supremacist empire."
Trump's comments reflect Washington's widening military approach to what he calls counter-narcotics operation, while Caracas portrays it as a new front in a long struggle over sovereignty and control in Latin America. Russia has condemned the recent US strike on an alleged drug smuggling vessel near Venezuela, warning that escalating American actions could have far-reaching consequences across the Caribbean. The October 3rd strike killed 4 people, whom Washington identified as narco-terrorists, according to US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held talks with his Venezuelan counterpart Ivan Gil, expressing strong condemnation of the US operation and voicing concern over broader regional instability. Moscow's foreign ministry cautioned that continued US military actions in international waters off Venezuela could pose serious risks to the region.
Sergei Lavrov said that Russia strongly condemns the new strike by the US armed forces on October 3rd on a ship in international waters near Venezuela. The ministers expressed serious concern about Washington's escalating actions in the Caribbean Sea that are fraught with far-reaching consequences for the region.
Venezuelan officials said Lavrov offered Caracas full support and solidarity following the strikes. Foreign Minister Gil added that Russia is committed to preserving Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace, underscoring Moscow's backing for Venezuela amid rising tensions. This morning, I held a conversation with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in the context of his country's presidency of the UN Security Council. I explained to him the security situation in the Caribbean in light of repeated threats from political sectors in the United States that seek to justify a military deployment in our region, putting the stability of the continent at risk. We received the Russian government's full expression of support and solidarity with Venezuela, as well as its commitment to preserving Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. We agree on the importance of strengthening joint action within the framework of the UN, the Security Council, and the Group of Friends in Defence of the UN Charter to ensure respect for international law and the sovereignty of peoples. The US maintains that the strike was part of ongoing efforts to disrupt alleged drug trafficking into the country. The exchange reflects Moscow's opposition to US military measures in the region and highlights the growing geopolitical stakes in the Caribbean as Washington's military campaign expands. US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth said on October 5th that he has every authorisation needed for military strikes on vessels allegedly carrying illegal drugs near Venezuelan waters. The latest strike on October 3rd killed 4 people and marks at least the 4th US action in the southern Caribbean in recent weeks. Hegseth described the operations as targeting groups designated as foreign terrorist organisations, citing legal authority under counterterrorism and self-defence frameworks.
We have every authorization needed. These are designated as foreign terrorist organizations. If you're in our hemisphere, if you're in the Caribbean, if you're north of Venezuela and you want to traffic drugs to the United States, you are a legitimate target of the United States military.
Open source analyses indicate the US Navy now maintains a full-spectrum maritime strike posture off Venezuela, including Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, Virginia-class submarines, amphibious elements, F-35A jets, P-8A patrol aircraft, and MQ-9B drones. These assets allow real-time tracking and engagement of suspected narcotics vessels and paramilitary activity, extending US influence far from shore. Across the strait, Venezuela fields Su-30 Mk2 fighters, S-300VM surface-to-air systems, and a paramilitary network, though readiness is reportedly limited. President Nicolás Maduro has warned that any attack on Venezuelan territory would prompt a regional response. Critics question the strike's legality, noting the targeting of alleged criminals in international waters and the absence of confirmed evidence for narcotics shipments. Hegseth and President Donald Trump defend the campaign as part of a counter-narcotics and counter-terrorism strategy aimed at halting trafficking into the US, while acknowledging the risks of escalating tensions in the region.